this meeting of the Carson City Library Board of Trustees meeting to order. And we will begin our first item of business with public comment. So members of the public who wish to address the
I'm
library.
sorry, excuse me, Chair Balderson.
Yes.
I think I still need to take roll real quick.
Do we? I don't think we did last time. If you feel we need to, go ahead.
Chairperson Balderson,
Here.
Vice Chair Cranston,
Here.
Trustee Lucas,
Present.
Trustee Markle, present. Trustee Nichols, quorum is present.
Thank you. Public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the Library Board of Trustees may come forward and speak on any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Library Board. Do we have any members of the public who would like to address the board? Anyone on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. And seeing no one in the room, we will move on to our next item of business. That's approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the draft minutes? Do we have any discussion? They were long. It was a nice meeting. It was nice to have that conversation on the strategic plan. You missed a good one, Vice Chair.
I was on a plane, so.
I suppose we can forgive you. All right, well, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I move we accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. We will move on to item 4. If you're following along on the agenda, that's Library Board of Trustees business discussion and possible action regarding the Carson City Library Calendar 2021 with holiday and staff development closures. Did we want to hear a summary from the staff first before we open for discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Todd Colgrove, Library Director, for the record. This is just to clarify what might have been less than clear in the public record when the calendar was approved initially. That is that the library itself will be physically closed on October 1st for the Staff Development Day, pending the board's approval.
Do you have any questions on this one? No. And is this this item specific to the one day, or are we having a broader discussion about the calendar? This is specific to October 1st staff development. And I think we annually review a calendar, but that's not till later in the year. Does that sound right? Okay.
That's correct, Madam Chair. Todd Colgrove, for the record. The board normally reviews the calendar in its January meeting to look at all of the potential closures and dates and times that the library will be open and makes any suggestions or modifications at that point. Although we could actually, I misspoke. The board doesn't normally review that in its January meeting. It would normally review that in the November-December meeting with possible changes or modifications in the January meeting.
So it seems to me it's pretty, over the last couple of years, it's been pretty common for us to close the library completely for our staff development day. Can you tell me a little bit more about what will be happening on this particular staff development day?
With pleasure, Madam Chair. This staff development day is a follow-on to the strategic planning professional development that we did 2 months ago, and then that the board participated in the last meeting. And if I may be allowed to go sideways, hats off to this board for what I understand was a remarkable session, lots of good engagement with the community. I know that Professor Steinman at UNR was quite impressed and has actively drafted up the document. In fact, I have this draft technical report that didn't make it to me in time for this meeting, but I will be forwarding this to the board via BCC for your potential additional input. So at this meeting, at the October 1st meeting that's upcoming, there's a combination of things that are coming together. One of them is the strategic development that we did intensively throughout the day 2 months ago, bringing that together with the input from the board and the public that was last month, and tying it together with the intensive one-on-one communication sessions that I've been having with each of the staff members to surface all of the things that we might be doing right, might not be, what might be working, what might not be working, and really great ideas that we saw from the rest of the world that we might want to implement. Those all come together now in a process that will be, that is the critical path piece of the equation, right? All too often in library practice, we get really comfortable checking the box and saying the strategic plan is done. But the devil's in the implementation details, and that's really what this is all about, is bringing all those pieces together and actually crafting an implementation plan that we hope to be able to bring back to the board in its January meeting with granular detail about what's happening, when and where, and what the outcomes might look like. And so in order to launch that next step of it on October 1st, next Friday, the staff will be engaged again in looking at the draft strategic plan that came back, incorporating the new input, looking at all of the content that has been surfaced from the conversations among staff, and then actually beginning the process of mapping this out. So it's each and every member of the staff has skin in this game. And so what we're actually doing is dividing and conquering the build out of this process that will take, again, the next couple of months to really have a mindful approach to it. But that's a long answer to a short question, Madam Chair. It's our hope that it will result in the first draft of an implementation plan that will ultimately take a couple of months to fine tune and bring back to this board.
And, well, thank you for that, Director Colgrove. I do have just a follow-on. You believe that the best, most effective way to get to that end result is to have all staff together in one time and have the library closed for that reason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said it exactly, that because the library is short-staffed by design and making the most efficient use of community funds, we're not all in the same room at the same time. And if we're going to have truly an all-hands-on-deck approach to something, it just requires us to physically close the building in order to bring that about.
And is there any reason why we chose a Friday over a midweek day or a weekend day?
The only reason that Friday was chosen is that that's historically been the pattern that the library has held its strategic, or not its strategic, but its staff development days on. Normally it would be a half-day closure or a full-day closure, and it just happens that that was a day that was targeted for the full day.
Okay, I can certainly
And we will-
appreciate tradition.
Sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to clarify that we will, of course, with the board's approval, make a very proactive push at making sure that word gets out to the community, including on Carson Now and a press release and on all of the library's social media, in addition to posting on the doors. Ideally, no one will be surprised that the library is closed and actually drive down here, but if they do, they'll see the signage on the door. And I'll look forward to talking with them after the fact.
Well, and the reason I ask that is really to know, if someone's looking at traffic patterns or utilization I would like to see someone putting some thought behind these closures that say, okay, well, this is usually a slow day, and so that's the best day to close if we need to close. So I certainly have respect for tradition and appreciate that it's been usually a Friday, but something to keep in mind going forward as you develop the next year's calendar, for sure. I would appreciate some data, some trends, something that would suggest, why one day is better than another.
Much appreciated, Madam Chair. In fact, it may be that Access Services Manager Reinhardt may be able to speak to that. I don't know that we have, COVID has changed so many of our patterns, but certainly prior to 2019, he would have more insight into which days were heavier and lighter.
Irma Reinhardt, Access Services Manager for the record. As Todd has mentioned, one, it has been traditional that we do it on a Friday, not for any particular reason, just that typically that's, the winding down of the week. Second, in terms of statistics related to, which days are busiest, I am able to pull those numbers. Again, COVID is going to impact those numbers, but I can look at historical data from 2019, 2018, and 2017.
That'd be terrific. So if that's information you might have ready next time we bring up a calendar, I think it would be really useful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I can provide that.
I'm sorry, fellow trustees. Any other questions from the board? All right, if no other questions, I'll accept a motion to approve this closure for October 1st.
I move to accept the closure for the training day on October 1st.
Yes,
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, and thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Move on to our next agenda item. We're gonna hear from our library director on our administrative reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Todd Coolgrove for the record. Just looking at the quick thumbnail sketch, again, just underlining my thanks to this board for its very active participation in the strategic planning refresh. I wanted to bring to the board's attention a number of advisory issues. One of them is staffing changes that have taken place at the library. Both former collections development librarian Amy Lauder and creative learning librarian Maria Clusta have accepted other employment and are no longer with the library, which means that those positions are currently vacant, and we're in the process of working within the library and externally with the Human Resources Department to figure out if there might be more effective and appropriate ways to do the staffing. That's also something that we'll be touching on in the professional development coming up. We've already touched on the refresh of the library's strategic plan, so that is moving forward, and you will find that PDF in your email once I've sent it to you with blind carbon copies. So feel free to respond to me and engage me in any sort of dialogue that you might have on that, because it will be a blind carbon copy, and there won't be any danger of a forum, a walking quorum. I also wanted to make sure to advise the board as to changes that you'll already have noticed in the agenda format, specifically flattening a little bit of the org chart here. You'll notice that the report from Access Services activity is part of the same agenda item that the library director's report is in. Going forward, these different reports will be presented after consultation with the board chair. They will be attached to the agenda and present for your review, and any of the managers associated will be requested to be present at the meeting should you have any questions deriving from those reports, but they won't be presented as separate standalone reports. Also, you'll notice that the Friends of the Carson City Library report will be missing from the agenda until and unless we actually get updates, and then we'll bring that back in. I also wanted to, it won't be a surprise, you'll have noticed that the banner on the south-facing wall is still there on the library. That is something that we'll be reimagining and drafting these proposals on as the strategic plan comes together. Basically, we're refreshing it. We've got a real resounding consensus on the things that we're doing as a staff and as a library, not just from staff, but also from the board and the community. And so part of what we're doing is boiling it down into that message that we'd like to reflect. If we're going to put a banner up on the outside of the building, Ideally, it should reflect what we in the community believe it is that we're pulling on. And if we're on it, so basically, once we have that idea, we'll we'll ask our contractor to draft a couple of proposed banners and then bring those back for this board's review. With luck, we might have that in the November, December meeting, but it may be a January item before we're back replacing that. We want to approach it mindfully and not just slap something up for the purpose of it. If the board would like us to take the existing one down until we've got a new one, I'm more than happy to do that. My knee-jerk reaction was to take the old one down when we're putting a new one up and minimize the expense of city resources in doing that. I also wanted to provide a quick update regarding the upcoming Nevada Day Parade because it was discussed in this meeting a couple of months ago. The things that have changed are that the city, again, has pulled everything together, and the mayor has specifically reached out with the human resources director to strongly encourage all staff to participate in the parade by bringing their family and marching along with the other city employees up at the front of the parade. We'll be doing that, and of course, this board is more than welcome to participate and join us. In reality, I don't know how many of us will be there from the library because, as we discussed previously, we can't force the issue and we're not paying staff to be there, but they're welcome to volunteer along with the rest of the city staff that will be marching up at the front. And as we're marching, we will be carrying some signs and some banners that hark back or call out a specific historic moment in Carson City, in our case, that ties to the library. So we're sort of collectively scratching our heads and wondering what that might be, and then we'll try to pull those together and print those up. There's been a specific request that we actually bring the pedal library, so we'll bring the pedal library, and I've got a couple people that have confirmed that we'll be there. Again, you're welcome to join us, and we'll be doing our best. I don't know that we'll actually try to bring the maker van out. And the jury is still out. The last thing that I heard from HR Director Briquetta, who has been put in charge of this city entry, is that there wasn't going to be a formalized float, but there was likely going to be a trailer with at least a band, but that's about as much structure as has come together as of the last time I talked with the director. If you'd like to participate, again, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be sure to keep you in the loop. Otherwise, I'll try to avoid passing along the strong arm encouragement that you participate along with any of the unclassified employees. Also, updates, I wanted to let this board know that, yay, one of the things that has come together is that we've been able to get social worker Richard Zemke from the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services scheduled and regularly coming into the library as part of the Office in a Box program that state agency provides. Specifically, he's coming in on Fridays and spending the Fridays working there. This last Friday was the very first day that he had been back in the library. And I can tell you that he was just busier than a one-armed paper hanger. He was talking with people and working with people all day long. I'm learning and astonished, actually, at the amount of good and benefit that this service provides. I was surprised at, as an example, that if you participate in the Medicare program, apparently, if you miss one of the deadlines for making your payment to Medicare, you're penalized for the rest of your life. Or if there's a mistake about the payment comes out of this, if the payment doesn't get made, then it gets pulled automatically from your Social Security payment, and many of the people that are counting on this, those are the nickels and dimes that they use to live with. And so this sort of draconian move if you weren't expecting it, all of a sudden could make you housing insecure, which is not surprisingly what a number of the folks that Richard Zemke is able to help with. So another part of this that's quite exciting is the staff of the library going to school, just as I am. We brought Richard Zemke in. He gave a presentation to the rest of the library staff to figure out, hi, I'm Richard Zemke. This is what I do. This is the thumbnail sketch. And staff are already beginning to develop a comfort level about what he can help with, that he's seen as part of the team. I have to mention that I did, when I mentioned his particular services at the recent Friends of the Carson City Library meeting, that was the one item out of my director's report that got a ton of input from the Friends. They were just wildly excited about it and saw a tremendous amount of benefit in having someone like that available in the community. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your suggestion on that. I also wanted to circle back to what I mentioned earlier, what I've been actively engaged with, and all of us as a staff have been actively engaged with within the library, which is what we're calling a 30, 60, 90-day communications reset, which is our answer to having been in lockdown and having a new library director that nobody really knew, and lines of reporting that are fluxing and changing all around the place. And so after consultation with the board chair and the managers, we agreed on a framework that would involve an initial 30 days that was intensive communication between the library director and each of the members of the staff, specifically focusing on what's working, what isn't working, and how do you see the work of your department fitting in with the strategic plan of the library. And also along the way, hi, I'm Todd. Let me tell you about who I am and where I come from, some of what, the dirty little secrets that you can leverage against me, and we can get to know one another a little bit better about what I might be good for, right? So how I might be useful on the service desk, or if there's a problem with the bathrooms, and how my door is always open, and let's talk. Let's develop a deeper degree of communication. And I have to say, this literally, this is the folder of my notes from the initial meetings with just 10 staff, the 10 staff that are FTE in the library right now. And it is proving to be a treasure trove. Not surprisingly, each of the members of this staff know precisely what's working and what isn't working and what they'd like to do. And also, not surprisingly, we share the same motivations. We all want to be there. Paraphrasing the library's strategic plan, the mission, libraries make things better for people. And that's why we're there. And that's part of where Richard Zemke fits in perfectly, and we're carrying it forward. We're all pulling together. I've heard it said recently by an author that the library is where the tunnel is, the tunnel to a better life, a different life, a brighter future, a different experience. And we are all committed to keeping that tunnel open, even if it means communicating with one another much more than we might necessarily feel like we have time for in the moment. So again, thank you, Madam Chair. That has been just game-changing, and it will change the game with our strategic implementation plan that begins to come out of this meeting next Friday. Which again, that I did mention that we expect that to come together and get mapped out by all of us putting in time that we don't necessarily have to make it happen, because we believe in this mission. And we'll bring that back to this board for your review in January of 2022. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Colgrove. Any questions from the board?
Yes, Trustee Lucas for the record. As we're waiting to decide how you're going to restaff and fill missing positions or change positions, have you been able to cover all the duties that have been done by the prior staff? I mean, I know that it was time to schedule fall programming, correct? And from creative learning, and you have adequate resources? How's that been handled?
Thank you for the insightful question, Trustee Lucas. You're absolutely right. And the short answer is no, we don't have adequate resources to be handling it at the level that it had been being handled before. What we have done, however, coming out of this framework, and I didn't finish the framework on the 30, 60, 90-day timeframe. The initial 30 days was the conversation. The next 31 to 60 days is really about bringing together all of the things, our focus, what we're doing. And then the 61 to 90 plus is about the implementation. So we're right now in the 31 to 60 day frame where we're really talking about all of this. To get there, though, I was able to reach out, working with the HR director and the board chair, to the city and offer responsibility pay to both Manager Reinhardt of Access Services and Department Business Manager Joy Holt. Specifically, the ask was that in Department Business Manager Holt's case, collections development is closely related to the fiscal responsibilities that she has, because that's all about buying and selling and invoicing, getting all of this stuff done. We're actively working on that and trying to figure out how can we bring some of that responsibility into the department business manager role to avoid the duplication. So we don't have to have a manager that's doing the spend and then coming back and asking a second manager to duplicate the effort of the data entry and double checking, if we can simplify that to some degree. So I specifically asked her, after meeting and working with the collections development team, to see if we all agreed that that was the good plan. And she agreed to accept the responsibility pay to hold that together for the next 90 days. In a similar fashion, Access Services Manager Reinhardt, after a conversation with the creative learning team and evaluating the whether or not it might be possible, given the responsibilities and the workload within Access Services, we figured out that there's a lot of overlap potentially between what happens in creative learning with the delivery of programs and workshops with what the staff in Access Services do. In fact, I understand that Access Services Manager Reinhardt himself is known to deliver a remarkable story time. And so I truly look forward to seeing how these start coming together. Already, it's foggy, but it's becoming clear that maybe what we didn't need was a lot of necessarily managers, but a different organizational structure where we could pull from a matrix of staff, right? That someone that's in the department called Access Services might also be able to pitch in and help deliver a program, even if they're not organizationally housed within that silo, if that makes sense. I don't mean to speak early, but that's what it's beginning to look like, and those are the conversations that we're having. And if that's the case, I welcome it, because we'll end up with a much more efficient and effective structure moving out of this. So in the near term, the short answer is we don't have enough staff to deliver what we had been expecting ourselves to deliver. That said, I'm confident that each and every one of the managers would have, they told me, and they may have told you separately, that they were also overloaded. They didn't have the time, and their staff didn't have the time to do all the things that we expected them to do. So this is part of a process of remixing the organizational structure and what we do, combined with re-engaging staff, so that we end up not doing all of the things that we used to think we had to do, but just doing the things that we all agree we really need to do and want to do, and doing them with the staff that we have right now so that additional resources can be put to bear on the things that we all agree the library needs to be doing. So again, an awfully long answer, Trustee Lucas. I hope that speaks to the call of the question.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I also was curious a little bit more about the Office in a Box program and our new social worker, which sounds fabulous. I'm wondering, was that advertised that he was going to be there on Fridays? How it sounds. I'm really happy to hear that he had a lot of engagement. Was he just wandering around, reaching out to people? Or did people know he was going to be there and come to him? Like, how did this all shape up? I'm just curious. It sounds
Again,
really
thank you.
interesting.
They remarkably insightful questions, and and you're right. It would not at all be creepy to have some random stranger wandering around the library and just asking, "Hey, I'm here. Can I help?" And the fact of the matter is that we had an Department Business Manager Holt and I both had an in-depth conversation along with Access Services Manager Reinhardt about what are we doing, how do we implement this, and then talking with Richard Zemke, the social worker, to say, you know your community best, what's going to work best for you. And so he came into the library and we walked the spaces and looked at it. And what he asked for was a very soft entry, which is that we're not advertising it, and instead we just plant him at a table in a corner of the library where the usual suspects, what I believe was his phrase, of who he might work with would come into the library. And that would include housing insecure folks in addition. And so that's exactly what we did. We just basically said, you know your community, what space is going to work best for you. That's where he's planted. And then we introduced him to the library staff at the Friday all-staff meeting to say, here's Richard Zemke, this is what he does, this is where he's going to be sitting, these are the things that we can refer him to. And to be quite honest, I don't know about the whole network that was feeding his calls. I know that he goes to multiple places around the city, and there were a number of folks that were already queued up to show up and talk with him because someone from one of the other locations said, this is where you can go find him. And so he was quite busy within the library, and there were others that were showing up and pulling up a chair and just waiting. So somehow there is an informal network. Perhaps it's a more formalized network, but he was quite fully occupied. He was not wandering around and soliciting people for help. No, that's a good question. It really is. It's just a little table card, basically, that he sets up on his workstation, and he just seems very approachable.
And if I
I
could
I
shed
look forward to being able to make more noise about that and actually tell the story. And I would welcome any of the trustees to come by the library on a Friday. I'd be delighted to introduce you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all quite all right. I would like to shed a little bit of light just about that because this is a program that's run by the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services of the States where I work. And actually, before I came into my current position at that job, I was involved in that program, in the Office in the Box program. And this is the second attempt at partnering with Carson City Library. The first time failed. That was prior to Director Colgrove's time. And we had a couple of other staff turnover since then as well. And so it's really, really nice to hear that this time it worked. That's cool. But I would like to clarify, though, also, too, that Richard is not a licensed social worker. He does have a skill set that you would believe it, though. When you talk to him, yeah, he's got that heart. But what he can do being a welfare staff is probably one of the most critical things that you can do for somebody who is eligible for our services, and that is he can approve benefits for SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. And he can also approve folks for Medicaid, which is like huge. So those two pieces, especially for folks who need meds and aren't getting them. He's also, because he's so embedded in the city, he knows all these resources. He is just chatting with him. Folks just pull information out of him as they tell him their circumstances. He's got a list of things that are like, oh, yeah, you mentioned this, therefore maybe go over there, go check out this person. And I know a person over there because I'm over there on Tuesdays, and let them know I sent you, and all that. And it's wonderful in terms of referral. But that does stop short of full-blown licensed clinical social workers or just a regular licensed social worker. There's not a capacity for counseling like you would see with a regular social worker potentially. And so I don't want to, I know that the social worker in the library thing is a big deal for me, and I think it's a priority for you as well, Trustee Lucas. And so I don't want to give the impression that because we have this visitor through the Office in a Box program, that means that need is filled within the library. And I do think that we did have a very brief talk about that during the strategic planning meeting, and that when an opportunity presents itself, potentially in the form of these vacancies we're seeing with the managers, that if it's feasible to potentially cannibalize a position and say this is a full-time social worker spot now, that should still be up for discussion whether or not we have this visiting program through the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. So I just want to make that clarification that, social workers can't approve food stamp applications, but this guy can.
But this sounds like a good way to gauge
The need.
usage and need.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it does sound like it's showing us that there is some demand there. And then I think I'm to understand that at this point, what he's providing is at no cost to the library. It's part of the Health and Human Services budget and program.
Correct. There's
Is that
never going to be a
correct?
cost. That's correct.
Okay. And then, so he moves around. So I'm just trying to, this is a new
Yeah.
program to me. It's exciting. If demand was such, though, it sounds like he's got so many places to go, we would be looking at filling that need through the library, right? We couldn't add days or necessarily because I'm guessing we can't count on a different agency to provide
Right,
us
so-
unlimited free support.
Potentially, I would see this more as an opportunity to braid services together. Even hiring a library staff position that is a licensed social worker, that person is not going to be able to approve Medicaid applications or
Right.
food stamp applications or issue benefits the way that Richard can. And so there's a need for those two things to kind of work together and to amplify their own work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's probably more where I would see it. And then the other thing too, the Office in a Box program is constantly reevaluating their workers' schedules because need ebbs and flows. So if he's got a line out the door at the library every single Friday forever, and the lines are getting shorter at another location where he visits, you might see an opportunity where his schedule can change. Likewise, though, if the line goes down to nothing at the library, don't expect him to show up every week,
Right.
because his time could be better utilized in another location in the city. But I would say that those things, while they're related, they wouldn't be in a position to replace or supplant each other because the capabilities are different.
I do think it's really interesting, though, that apparently there is a demand.
Oh, mhm.
So it's verification of the demand that we thought existed. So
I have a question, Trustee Markle, for the record. What are the hours? Is he there the whole time the library's open? So it's not like 12 to 4 or something, it's just all day?
My apologies, Todd Colgrove, for the record. It's a good question. His workday, I believe, starts at 7 or 7:30, one of those two. And since the library isn't open at that time, he's working over at Carson City Health and Human Services. When the library is open at 10, then he's in the library for the rest of his workday, which ends, I'm going to guess that that's at 4 o'clock. I don't know when it formally is scheduled to end. But he was in the library things I shouldn't say in public, but I think he was in the library past that 4 o'clock closing time, if that's when he was scheduled on Friday. And part of it was just, I think, getting up to speed. So he's
Sure.
not in the library until it closes on Friday, just until his workday ends.
Okay. Is there any, and, you know, I don't really know a lot about what he's doing or the need, but is there any concern about privacy? I mean, you say he just sets up at a table and what he puts a tag that says office in a box and people automatically know to go to him?
Those are both really good questions and things that we vetted before we started the first day, which is to basically say a lot of what he does can be very open and public. But if there's a need for privacy, we do have a room around the corner that he can use for that private session. I don't know which aspects of his approval process needs to be private, but he seems to be able to accommodate it by being in an area where people can't see his screen, and he's working with the customer.
So he already has a constituency, so to speak, that follow him around. How do people who aren't part of that constituency, who might have a need, know about talking to him?
Again, I think those are really key questions, and you're right. He does have a constituency, and he does have people. It appears to be largely built on word of mouth, one connection at a time, which is really the best way to build any network that I know of. That said, what I'm counting on is the library staff coming up to speed and acquiring some of his insight into all of the different, where do you go to do this, and how can I connect people, so that we can, to some extent, duplicate that part of what he does throughout the week. So he gives us a gateway into talking about all of the other services and a lens into seeing how those are library services, so that the rest of us can come up to speed and be able to direct people to the services that they need when he isn't there. But in the library proper, as we ramp up, and I may be second guessing this as being part of why Richard requested this soft launch. I think to some extent he's hoping and counting on, like I am, the rest of us coming up to speed with those other aspects of what he can do, so that he isn't just overloaded by, I mean, even if we put something out on our social media, and if there are a lot of people, again, every single member of the Friends Board was over there when I said, yeah, he can help you solve some of these problems that are associated with, Medicare and Social Security and stuff. They were ready to take a number and get in line, and that's what we're trying to avoid, right? So, I mean, I think there's the need is great, and it's just a question of how do we gradually begin to ramp it up. So, as we can, I'll defer to him to ask, how could we get the word out to the people that you're most likely to be able to help in the near term, and gradually ramp that up.
And does he speak multiple languages?
Not that I know of, although he might. I understand that his former boss is in the room with us, so she might be able to speak to it. But
He does, but not Spanish. I believe it is I don't want to say Russian, but Eastern Bloc language. So somewhere over there.
So he
and
doesn't speak Spanish?
does not speak Spanish.
Oh, okay.
No, not that I know. But again, though, too, he is equipped with the full office in a box, so that does include a phone, telephone, which is important because the state has a contract for telephonic translation services. Yes, so that's how we deal with customers when you don't speak their language. It's get a translator.
Okay, thanks.
If I could, Director Colgrove, get back to the first bullet point. You mentioned the staffing changes at the library. And I want to put on the record, we did receive, I guess the city has, they call it like an exit interview, but it's kind of like it's more like a form to fill out, like a survey. So we did receive, I know received one for one of the resignations. And we did get a chance to review it. Did we receive one for the other?
Director Colgrove, for the record, not to my knowledge, Madam Chair. I did specifically make the ask of the Director of HR, and she indicated that she would double check, but nothing was forthcoming. So my assumption is that there was actually no survey filled out.
Okay.
So actually, how many actual positions are you short?
Right now, there are two positions that are, two of the manager positions that are vacant. There also is, there are a couple of library shelver positions that are vacant that we've got the jobs open that we're actively trying to hire. And we have one library assistant position and a senior library assistant position that was in creative learning. So we're really on a skeleton crew right now. Skeleton as in there are 10 full-time staff that are on there. There would normally be 14. So at this point, we're down about 4.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, do we have any other questions for the director on his report? Any part of the report? Okay. Shall we move on? And Director Colgrove, did you say going forward you would incorporate reports into attachments for our review, and we would forego a presentation, which is basically making sure that we read the report, and then instead leave it to the trustees to ask questions as they have them. Was that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, and my apologies for having launched directly forward to item C on the agenda, which is the library director's report. But going forward in an ideal situation, I would say any and all of the reports that are here for your review would be attached and they would be as items. And we should likely go through them one at a time, specifically to say, item 5A, that the access services report is incorporated into the record by reading it. And I don't know if there are any questions that the board might have deriving from that report. Should you have questions, please direct them through me to Access Services Manager Reinhardt. And similarly, for item B on the agenda, the financial reports are here presented and incorporated into the record for your review. Department Business Administrator Holt is unfortunately not able to join us tonight. She similarly is out with a cold, but I can do my best to field any questions that the board might have deriving from those reports.
Trustee Lucas, for the record, I had a question on the general fund report. I noticed that we had expenses in management leave and annual leave payoff, and we had no budget there. And I wasn't sure if perhaps we just kind of considered that all part of the larger salaries budget and moved it as needed, or do we not expect to have any expenses there in any given year? Seemed a little strange, but.
Thank you, Trustee Lucas. I'm delighted to field the question, but completely unqualified to be able to speak with authority to it right now. I can absolutely run that to ground and report back to you and the board via BCC, if that would be acceptable. If you could go back and put your finger on the bullet points again so that I can make sure to have thorough notes.
Sure, it's management leave pay and annual leave payoff. We have negative remaining budget because there was no budget, but we have expenses. And so I was unsure if maybe when we're doing the budget, the larger line items for salaries and hourly and seasonal are expected to cover all of those different types of leave without breaking it among them. Or if it seems strange, but I can't imagine we consider that we would never have those expenses. But I see no budget in them.
Thank you, Trustee Lucas. You're absolutely right. And as I understand it, again, I can't speak with authority to this, but as I understand it, those are expenses that would be associated with paying off the balances should an employee leave. And you're right, it is unreasonable to expect that we would never have that as an expense. It's my understanding that the city handles that separately as part of the true-up that happens biannually. But I'm just making that up based on what I've heard third hand. I will run that to ground with HR and payroll directly and see if I can report back. See if we should be incorporating that. Perhaps the city finance office might be able to speak to whether or not we should try to have a budgeted line item in there to account for that. Am I understanding the question? Okay.
My guess would be that it's probably part of the larger salaries pool, and they just don't break that out because it's really hard to predict. But that was just a question I had when I was looking at it.
And you're absolutely right. And when I'm saying that I'm hearing anecdotal input on the side, it is basically when there is someone retiring or someone leaving, and when we know that that's happening, then we do have that conversation with the city finance office so that we can budget for it ahead of time. But when it comes out of the blue, we don't normally have that budgeted. But I will get an authoritative answer on that and report back to the board.
All right, and I thank you, Director Colgrove. I don't see attachments for creative learning collection development. Is that a result of the vacancies?
That's
or-
correct, Madam Chair. There were no
Okay.
reports for either of the departments as a result of the vacancies.
Okay. And do we anticipate, well, we don't really know yet, right? If you're reevaluating who's doing what and what really needs a true management position versus potential other staffing. So,
Precisely, Madam Chair. I think that
Yeah.
there are certainly things that we want to be measuring and reporting on and reporting to this board, but they won't necessarily exist within the same containers that they did previously. They may, but that'll be something that comes out of our active conversations, because I'm bound, set, and determined that we're not going to keep doing something just because we've always done it. So it really needs to speak to the mission and the vision and things that we're measuring that actually move us forward. And to the extent we have metrics and things that we can report on that are meaningful for this board's consideration and input, then we'll absolutely bring that together. But I would anticipate that to be a bit of a moving target, something that we'll ask for this board's input on potentially in November, December, but likely in January. As we've got our implementation plan coming together, I would expect that the board might look at that, just as you did earlier, and say, well, I would like to know when are our busy days and our quiet days, and we can use that to inform the professional development rather than doing things strictly for our own convenience as a staff, to do them with the community at the center of what we're trying to schedule around. But that is a bit of a sea change, and it's something that will take time to fully get across the line. But I'll look forward to this board's review of the implementation plan and say, what about this? What about that? Can you give us numbers on this? And I would expect that as we get into the new year, we'll begin developing an entirely new reporting structure that will be clear and speak to the information that the board wants to see.
Thank you for that. I also would like to touch on, you said no report from the Friends, not anticipating a report from the Friends of the Carson City Library anytime soon. There is no requirement for them to provide us a report. And I think in years past, it was a nice courtesy. And then it was something that one of our trustees was willing to carry forward. And if there's any opportunity for us to shoulder a little bit more of that responsibility, I, I I know that everyone's got tight schedules, but to the extent if there's anybody on the board willing to take that on, to just attend and be more involved with the Friends and provide, even if it's just an informal report for the rest of the board members, I would certainly welcome that. Although I don't, again, I don't know everybody's schedule, and I would hate to dictate more time. But just something to keep in mind.
Well, I contacted the Friends of the Library. I contacted Sina because she's the president of the Friends of the Library, and she was supposed to let me know about a meeting, and she forgot. And so it might happen that there's more connection.
I'm over the moon that you even reached out. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
I mean, it does take some persistence and time. And
No, it's a
sooner
good
or later
idea.
It'll work.
It is a good idea too. I'm pretty sure Director Colgrove attends the Friends of the Library meetings. But yes, I think it would be like a good faith gesture kind of thing for
Right.
someone from the board to attend, periodically.
I absolutely. I'm just so thrilled you were able to reach out, and maybe you missed this time, but keep trying.
Okay.
And that's exciting. Because again, it's just really just a relationship.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
I don't consider it like a transaction, like somebody has to have a work product or anything. Just
Mhm.
keep it going.
Sure.
Keep the dance going. That's
If I'm-
terrific. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Trustee Markle is absolutely correct that I do attend those meetings to the extent that I'm made aware of them, which as you pointed out, has recently been fairly short notice. There is a regular schedule. I think that the meetings, it's every other month, and I will send Trustee Markle a link to that. But to their website that talks about when they're upcoming. And they generally post the agenda that comes there, which is typically how I find out about it. But it's only the day or two before typically that it changes. And so I'll do my best as soon as it's on my radar to make sure that you're brought into the loop. Thank you for being willing and able to reach out there. It's a big deal. The Friends, actually, if I can thumbnail sketch it from their meeting that was this last Friday at lunchtime, we made a record. It was a 29-minute meeting, actually, which was remarkable. But the Friends reported that they expect to be back by the end of this year, have brought in over $55,000 a year, which is a good year for Friends. And so they've really brought it back to life and are moving forward. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. Their next meeting, there was a specific agenda item that they talked about wanting to bring up, which was about Sina wanting to restructure how the Friends of the library work with the library in terms of the ask. It's like, what are we asking for and what are they delivering for? And there's a lot of details there that we need to make sure to keep straight, because it's on the one hand sort of a contractual thing with the city and the chief finance officer, but on the other hand, they're the Friends of the Carson City Library. They are not this board. And so it's a little bit of a delicate dance there to make sure that we're doing the right things. So it would be very welcome to have the board's participation at the meetings.
Okay.
All right, well, terrific. Thank you for that. I do, just very briefly, I need to know more about circulating laptops. According to our access services report here, we use some CARES money to get like some Chromebooks and MacBooks to people so they can actually check them out, take them home. Is tell us more.
Sure. So earlier this month, we started circulating some Chromebooks. So far, 2 have gone out over the past week, and this is something that we have done something with the English language learners in home program with Florence Phillips. Currently, she has about 5 or 6 MacBooks for her students. So right now, we're just trying to get the word out to everybody that we have this resource available to them. And it's been a huge help for people that may have had their laptops or computers aren't working, but they have wireless, or they're working from home and they just want to go out and work at like a coffee shop or something like that. So I'm hoping to give you continuing good news about these Chromebooks, and hopefully I'll have the MacBooks ready to go at the end of this month. The MacBooks will have some Adobe programs on them, and it's more aimed towards high school students and things like that, so that they can work on some projects and stuff from home.
I'll take the bait about security questions. So the laptops, sorry, this is Vice Chair Cranston for the record. The laptops, what kind of security programs, like antivirus? After they get back, do they get wiped? Do they get reimaged? Like, how are we securing? Because, if someone's using it for their home work, they might be doing like banking information, they might be accessing their medical information. How are we ensuring that that information is removed after it gets returned to us so someone else doesn't get access to it?
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, the Chromebooks, typically what it requires is accessing it either with your Gmail account or logging in as a browser. Either way, when they get returned and their sign out, shut down, and restarted, from my understanding, that is enough with them. If I'm mistaken, correct me.
It depends on how they're set up in a lot of ways. I haven't used Chromebooks very much. I know that a lot of the schools are using them because they have very like account-based program functions.
Yeah.
So like you log in with your Gmail account, and then like it's kind of like a thin client, like everything's just there, and then when
Yeah.
you log out, it just wipes it. But it's still a piece of hardware that still can be vulnerable to viruses or malware attacks or anything like that if someone's misusing it.
Hmm.
So that's probably more of my main concern. Like the Chromebooks, like you said, when they're restarted or turned off, they tend to wipe what was there. But a piece of malware could be hiding in a place where it won't get wiped
Yeah.
just because you turned it off. There's parts of the computer's hardware where they'd be safe potentially. So that's more of my concern. The antivirus software, things like that.
So I mean that might be something that I need to take a closer look at for the Chromebooks. For the MacBooks, that's one of the reasons why it's taking me so long. Is one, MacBooks aren't in my wheelhouse, and 2, I just want to make sure that those are functioning properly, so they don't have the same type of feature that Chromebooks have, and I'm not quite as confident with the guest feature on that.
So are you setting all of these up? This city IT is not helping you in any way or offering support?
It's just me.
Okay, and then so I guess that kind of comes back to the question of like licensing for like antivirus software. The library probably has a certain number of licenses for the machines that are on site. So you would want to get licenses for these machines so you can install that, and that's where you'd probably want to reach out to city IT and get them involved in a little bit.
That's good advice. I'll check with them. Thank you.
What sort of sorry, Trustee Lucas for the record, what sort of a circulation time frame do these go out for? Are they like books?
2
or-
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Like most of the digital equipment, cameras, microphones, it's typically 2 weeks.
And can you tell me about this line here? Once these laptops have been cataloged, individuals with a Premier card or a library card in good standing will be able to check them out. So we don't care if it's Premier or library card in good standing.
So this is something that I meant to update. Right now, it's just a Premier card. With the in-house use ones, those ones are, if they have a Premier card or library card in good standing, they're able to check them out. But with the Chromebooks, as of right now, it's taking them out of the building is strictly for Premier card.
Okay, and that's consistent with what we do with our other.
With the other digital equipment, correct?
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And then, I guess my other question is, this is just equipment, right? There's no, internet component unless the person already has some kind of wireless beyond what the,
Correct. There's
Okay.
no hotspots attached or provided with these units.
okay.
Sorry, do we have hotspots that they can get with it if they need it?
I believe we have a couple in-house ones. I'm not quite sure about loanable ones, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Todd Colgrove for the record. You're absolutely right. I believe that Access Services, that we do have a couple of wireless hotspots, but we haven't actively lent those out. Frankly, I resisted going down the road of buying things that we were going to have to pay subscription for.
Yeah, the financial cost of like getting those pucks, the Verizon or like, it's not cheap, and I don't know that it would necessarily be worth it, but
There is opportunity coming up with the renewed FCC grant. There's an additional $2 billion that hasn't been spent that we could ask for if there's a compelling argument. The question I will point out though that the Chromebooks have already come in super handy when meeting the same. One of the problems that comes out of being short-staffed is that if one or more people call in sick, all of a sudden we have a crisis and we can't schedule a service desk. So we've had at least one instance where we've had to shut down the At 2 floor a little bit early, and we're able to stand up. We're able to help those patrons down on the main floor with Chromebooks or laptops that we've got available. They're using, of course, the library's Wi-Fi and not a separate hotspot.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't have anything else. Trustees, do you have anything else on this agenda item? All right, where are we? Item 6, other administrative reports? I don't.
Todd Colgrove for the record. My apologies, Madam Chair. Item 6 should not have made it onto this agenda, and I did not spot that when proofing it. Apparently, the change that I made internally didn't follow through with the final copy that made it out. So my apologies for any confusion that may cause.
All right, well, let's move on then. Item 7, board members' announcements and requests for information. Do we have any announcements from the board members? Any requests for information from the board members? All right, well then let's move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the Library Board of Trustees may come forward and speak on any topic that is relative or relevant to or within the authority of the Library Board. Do we have any members? I don't see anyone in the room. Do we have any members on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. All right, next item is adjournment. We're adjourned. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.